So what we did at the start of this year is we actually moved out of our home, rented that out, and we're renting ourselves. But what's interesting about that is we have a rental just up the road which has a rateable value of 1.5 million, and the home that we're living in has a rateable value of 3 million. But the rental that we have up the road, rental appraisal 1,400 a week, and we are paying 1,500 a week. So it's
Mm.
not much more in rent, but if we were to buy it, then it would be a lot more money.
Welcome to Slice, property made possible. We're a platform on a mission to reduce barriers to home ownership. This podcast is a safe space for our community to learn together and build the confidence required to start on their property journey. When you're ready to start, head along to slicetobuy.com and sign up for your free dashboard. We're back with another episode of Slice the Property podcast, and today we have Debbie Trent with us. Hello, Debbie.
Hello.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Great.
So tell us a little bit about your first home buyers experience, Debbie.
Well, I have to think back because we're going back to 98 now. So
Take
last
us
century.
back. Take us back.
My husband and I got married in 97, and he had a side hustle working in a pub covers van 3 nights a week.
Cool.
So that just really gave us the opportunity to save lots of money. And I was also managing a restaurant, working in the evening, so not much going out happening, lots of opportunity to save. And he was obviously working full time as well. So we bought our first home, which was in Linfield in Auckland, and it was just the most basic sort of rundown 3-bedroom home you could find, really.
Really, that was a thing for a while there, right? It was like your first home was a rundown home and then you renoed it. Like that was the Kiwi dream back then. Yeah, now I guess they've got more, new builds and other kind of opportunities and it looks a bit different. But what do you remember about that journey in terms of like challenges, thinking back, or did you find it to be a relatively easy journey?
Oh, no, it's still a big call. I think, buying a property is always a terrifying experience, You have to take a risk. I think I do remember that we put it on a 13-year mortgage.
Yeah.
And I think the interest rates back then were about 9%.
Yeah. So what, is that a regret?
No, not at all. But what we did from there is the following year we went to live in London doing our OE, and we managed to make the most of the exchange rate back to New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
And so we actually managed to pay off our first home within 3 years.
Oh, amazing.
So I was 25 at the time, my husband 28, and we were mortgage free. So that was pretty cool.
Wicked. And have you
Yeah.
bought property since that initial purchase?
Yeah, so after that we had sort of like a time of reflection where we came back from London for 6 months in New Zealand and just really started to talk to people and buy books and try and kind of figure out what on earth we were going to do. And I had the dream of being a stay-at-home mum, so I was trying to work out how that would all be possible. So yeah, it was just sort of reading books, and then I think that was the first time I kind of learned about capital gain. And there was a quote that was, over 900 years in the UK, property rises on average about 10% per year.
Yeah.
And so once I read that, I just sort of closed the book and went, right.
Cool. We're away here.
We know what we're doing.
And yeah, what has been your experience with property investment since?
Yeah, so our property investing journey started in the beginning of 2002. And so we sort of researched the market, and I think our strategy has been in Auckland that pre-COVID it was really predictable. So the capital gain would be like the market would go flat for 5 years, up for 5 years, flat for 5 years, sort of thing. So our strategy has been very much around buying just at that start of the upcycle,
Mm-hmm.
and then keeping it for 15 years and then selling it just before it plateaued. And then in that time, it would double in value twice. So that's sort of our strategy, and that sort of led quite a bit of our decision making.
What's your thought process on how many properties maybe you'd like to have in a portfolio at any one time? And you were saying that you're obviously saving time by maybe getting property managers and not being so exhausted with that. So potentially you don't want that portfolio to get too big that it becomes, exhausting to manage.
Yeah, so I guess now at this stage of life, we're kind of more gearing ourselves towards retirement and sort of being able to travel more. The kids are at university now, so want more of that independence. So yeah, just wanting the properties, want to make the most of the capital gain that will still be there in our lifetime, but want it to suit our lifestyle goals as well.
And with your kids coming through university now and, the prospect of them purchasing a home being quite difficult, do you have any views or intentions to support them or how they can get into property sooner?
I think my son has sort of spoken to me at times and sort of said, "Mum, I want to do it by myself." So I think we'll just wait and see how they go and
Yeah.
see if they do want us to help. Because if you can do it by yourself, there's such a massive sense of achievement.
Yeah.
And I'd never want to take that away from them. So we'll just give them space and see how they go and whether they come to us or not.
Yeah, and if they do come to you, maybe they'll, have had the time and put the thought into it to actually say, here's the plan and this is how you might benefit, or this is why we want to do it, or, you're giving them some accountability and ownership of that process as well.
Yeah, and they're both great savers.
Yeah.
I guess we're helping them, giving them a start so they don't have to get out of student loan. They're both going to stay at home while they're at uni and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So we're definitely helping them in that way.
Yeah. And that will help them build up that deposit and get those funds together.
Yeah, for sure.
Wicked. And with your career, obviously, you've had side hustles from the very beginning back there when you were purchasing your first home. But what does the career space look like for you now?
Well, I think for my husband, he's been contracting in IT since 99, and a lot of people are quite nervous about going contracting. The interesting thing is that we've actually found that sometimes you can have greater job security being a contractor, interestingly enough. When he worked for Enron in England, which was a major American company, which is quite famous for going bankrupt, and when they did, actually all the permanent staff lost their jobs and they actually kept the contractors on. So you just never know.
Well, contractors as a business, I mean, sometimes they do let them go because it's almost the more legit thing to do, but actually a business's sort of balance sheets can look better where they don't have permanent staff that they absolutely have to pay. So I guess there's pros and cons to each approach.
Yeah, and I guess for myself, I've probably worked just more in small business.
Yeah.
So that's just really useful for what we're doing now and launching our board game Hacktics.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about Hacktics and the board game.
We've just had it out to market for about 12 months now. So it took us about 4 years of development, and it's just really geared around helping the younger generation. So it's just a board game about life. You start when you're 18 and leaving school, and you've got all these opportunities. Are you going to buy stocks? Are you going to have a baby, plant trees, go to the beach, invest in commercial property? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So it's
really an overwhelming thought, right? Like just as you ran through all of that, I was like,
exactly. It can be overwhelming for so many 18-year-olds, when they leave school. So you choose your career in the game, and it's only 12 rounds long. And so, you have to make all these decisions. Are you going to go for a diversified portfolio? Are you going to buy commercial property? You're going to do giving back. There's all different sort of strategies that
so
you
it's
can
sort
employ.
of teaching you about investment, but in a fun and kind of easier to learn way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess our intention is that hopefully it really helps young people understand pathways to home ownership so that they understand maybe they do need a side hustle, maybe some stocks, but they're going to have to think quite outside the box of how they actually get their first home.
And is it focused particularly on getting into the first home, or is it also, how to purchase stocks and how to make some of those other financial decisions as well?
Yeah, it's definitely more well-rounded. I think the board game in a way is probably more focused towards business ownership. Like, to do well and win the game, you've really got to be buying and selling various businesses, things like that for cash flow reasons.
Interesting. Yeah. So it kind of takes you through different scenarios and you can play them out and go, how well did I go there? Actually, maybe I would go better if I,
Yeah, well, the first
invest in
time
this way.
people play is they always choose the pilot as their career choice because, obviously.
Seems sexy.
Exactly. But what they don't realise is that pilots often in those first 10 years don't make much money because they have to spend it all on their flying hours and they make the money later in the career. But those careers like plumbers that you earn straight away, that means you can invest straight away and that's often more advantageous.
Yeah, the sooner you can kind of get into investing and building your financial, I guess, portfolio. So, does it cover everything then? A bit of, stocks, a bit of, is KiwiSaver in there?
Not at this stage, but maybe one day.
It's a food for thought.
Yes, exactly.
But so sort of stocks, actually, how different careers might impact your finances, how purchasing a home or purchasing several properties might impact, the outcome of the game as well as business ownership. Because business ownership is obviously massive in New Zealand as well. We're a country of SMEs in a lot of ways. So it's just covering off all of those different kind of scenarios that you need to be considering, and it's all in a game.
It's all in the game. I mean, I didn't really think about buying a business till probably in my late 30s.
Hmm.
So it's just, if the teenagers can understand all those various opportunities, it's really empowering for them. So at the moment, we're just really focused on trying to get the game out into schools.
Cool. Yeah. So is there a particular age bracket that the game's aimed at, or is it pretty broad?
Probably aimed at 13 to 25, but we've had quite a few other people test the game and play the game in their 30s, and they're like, we need to know this stuff too.
Yeah,
So,
well, you see, those in their 30s didn't have that kind of, and there's still an issue in schools with not having that basic information and education around how to manage your finances, how to get a loan, what it means when you've got a loan. So, I mean, yeah, probably there's 30 up that have missed out on that opportunity. So, yes, you want to go to green pastures where they've got that opportunity to learn sooner. But I guess there's a large chunk of us that have missed out on that support at that educational level. So that's really admirable. And in terms of the game, if we think about other possible games that it might be similar to, what would you say?
well, we have really set out to compete with Monopoly.
Okay.
I mean, Monopoly's proven. I mean, it's the most successful board game in the world.
Monopoly is basically about home ownership.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So board games work to buy and sell property,
Yeah.
People love that and make money, etc. So yeah, I mean, one of our goals is maybe, hopefully, we can disrupt Monopoly's monopoly.
I like that.
Maybe. We'll see. That'll take a lot of work.
It will, but it's cool that you've got sort of different elements that you're educating on as well. And it's obviously, I mean, I wonder whether they built that as an educational thing or whether it was.
They actually built that to turn people away from capitalism. That was actually the intention behind it.
I feel it may have had the opposite effect.
Exactly.
Oh, no. Oh, well, at least they were well-intentioned. Good
Yes.
for them. And they did well. So at least some good people got some money out of it. But that's amazing. And in terms of, I guess, first home buyers that are now going through the journey, what sort of advice would you give, having had that experience growing your own property portfolio?
You can do it. It is hard. It is really hard, but you can do it. It's all about having a good plan and just, thinking outside of the box and how can you achieve and just talk to people and buy books and listen to great podcasts and, you will get there.
Yeah, I think that is a huge barrier we speak about is actually just feeling like you can't do it. So just hopefully people listen to this and go, oh, well, she said we can, so we can. But in terms of your property portfolio, what kind of properties and what's your investment strategy? Like what's your focus been in there? Is it a mixture of apartments or is it existing? Or you said buy and hold over that 15-year period is a big part of your strategy, but is there a type of property that you're interested in when you're investing?
I guess we tried to balance the portfolio with capital gain properties versus cash flow.
Yeah.
That was very much the intention
So
early on.
some that get great rent and others that maybe have a lot of land or are going to improve in value.
Yeah, great location. Exactly. I think as we've gone on, though, we're probably looking more at ones with good capital growth. When we bought in 2011, it was a good time to buy, but it was just sort of coming out of that leaky homes time as well. So you sort of didn't want to get stuck with anything like that. So we bought a couple of places that were more 1960s, 1970s, where the basements, so they were better cash flow properties, but then that also has its issues too. So.
Yeah, any property that you buy is always going to come with its challenges, but I guess
Yeah.
it's just knowing whether or not you're equipped to deal with those challenges and avoiding some of those that are real lemons, like as you say, weather tightness issues. That's been a massive thing in New Zealand. And it's hard when going through that due diligence process as well because you get excited, you find a property and you want to go with that, and then you realize actually there might be something wrong and there might be a reason why this is selling for, a reasonable price. How do you manage that kind of due diligence process and doing your research when looking at an investment property? Do you rely on a lawyer quite heavily, or do you do a bit of it yourself, like you're quite used to the documentation, like looking at a limb?
Yeah, absolutely. We ensure that we do good due diligence and go through the whole property file and just read everything, just make sure, there's no warning bells in there. So, yeah, definitely do a thorough approach as we can with our due diligence.
And do you rely on partners to support you with that as well, like a lawyer supporting?
Yeah, we're fortunate. We've had a really great team of an accountant, a lawyer, and a mortgage broker, and they kind of work together as well. They're really good friends too. So they easily, transfer information between each other. So I think having that really great team behind us has been wonderful.
It's really interesting that you said they transfer information between each other really well, because that's one thing that we're trying to combat with Slice is that you might actually have, I mean, you've obviously been working with those partners for some time, but often you'll partner your own broker with your own lawyer and they haven't worked together before, and that transfer of information isn't necessarily easy, and it can result in things slipping through the cracks. And that's where we actually have partners working on the Slice platform. So the brokers, the accountants, the lawyers, and they all follow our processes, and you can actually communicate and collaborate with them through the platform. So
That's
that's,
great.
yeah, that's been a big part of what we're trying to provide to first home buyers who are new to building that team. What did building that team look like for you? Like, how long have you been working with those particular partners, and how did you find them?
I think that goes back to about 2002. We started, yeah, just researching. And I think we started with like an accounting firm, and they were like, oh, no, we really think you need to talk to this lawyer over here. So then we went to that lawyer. He's like, no, no, actually, you need to talk to these accountants. So, yeah. And then that's we got
Yeah, so it's a
the
bit of
loop.
trial and error, and then
Yeah.
eventually you find your team,
Yeah.
which can be challenging because it's overwhelming when you are sort of earlier on in that journey.
Very.
But yeah, you said one of the key things was actually them being able to collaborate and communicate together. Are there any other kind of factors that influence what partners you like working with, or what was important when building your team of experts?
I guess the relationship is just really important, making sure, you get on really well. So for us, it was fortunate that they were more in our age group. So we've been able to be with them for 20 years. And now we notice that they are starting to reduce their hours and things like that.
Yeah.
So
So you're going to have to build a new team on the Slice platform.
possibly, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think a lot of our first home buyers don't have those connections yet. So it's also about trusting that you've got a partner that is going to be transparent with you, is not going to continue to increase the fees based on their hourly rates or services. And that's where fixed fees can be quite a great benefit. And that's another thing that we
Absolutely.
offer. Do you sort of have negotiated fees with your partners now that's happened over time, or has that just been?
I think one advantage has been that the location of the lawyers and the accountants haven't been in the costly suburbs. So
Yeah.
the fees are often a lot cheaper. And I think that's been really helpful.
Yeah, because that can be really challenging for first home buyers, maybe a little bit more manageable when you're on your second, third, fourth, but yeah, it can be a real challenge. What sort of advice would you have for first home buyers when it comes to maybe choosing their team members or knowing what's going to make a good partner?
I think it's people that you relate well with, that you get on with, that you can tell that they have, good integrity and trustworthy and just really efficient and great communication and good systems.
Awesome. And speaking of partners, obviously you purchased your first home with your partner, and now is he a big part of your property investment journey, and how have you guys sort of worked together through that?
Yeah, I think we've done really well. I know a lot of married couples struggle to do renovations and things together. I guess we seem to just have it all pretty well nutted out. He does all the outside stuff and I do all the inside stuff. He leaves all the interior decorating to me.
Yeah.
He never voices any opinion. He's far too smart for that, I think. So yeah, and I do all the accounts and he's always been great just trusting me with all the financials. So yeah, we seem to work it out between us pretty well.
So really just, yeah, knowing who's contributing what and having shared expectations on how that's going to go down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. If you were to go back and give advice to your younger self, what advice would you give her?
I'm pretty happy that we've taken risks, and I'm really content that we have, stepped out of the box and tried things. So I'm very happy with that. like I said before, didn't know about capital gain till my mid-20s and buying business till late 30s. So I think just with the board game, I think that's my way of expressing this is just helping the generation,
Yeah.
so they have the information and the tools that they need to make good decisions.
Yeah, so you sort of wish you just were provided some more of that learning and education around specifically finances and those
Yes.
financial opportunities in school.
Absolutely.
That's a massive one. It's still not there in the curriculum, I'm afraid.
No.
But if you can make it enjoyable as well with a game, that's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned taking risks as well, which I think is really important when you're younger because you've got more time to learn from those risks, come back from those risks, make more money if you lose money. Yeah, what's your view on kind of risk and how has that changed through your lifetime to today? Financial risk, I guess, or investment risk.
Yeah, I think this year is probably one of our riskiest years, even running 3 separate businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and we're trying to grow the IT consultancy business. So, yeah, it has, yeah, been really risky, I think.
So
So
you've sort of maintained that view that risk it for the biscuit.
absolutely. I mean, we're fortunate that when we've both done tests, we've both got exactly the same risk profile has come
Ah,
out. So
interesting.
that's really made it a lot easier. But yeah, I guess I just don't want to live life with regrets. So I'm happy that, we've tried to make a board game and we're going to try and help people and whatever happens, happens. And I'll be content with that.
Yeah. And is that sort of focused around your purpose as well? Is that even if, even if it's not a financial goal that's realized, can feel content that you have made an effort?
I think so. And I think the whole idea of manufacturing in China was completely overwhelming. To have come out the other side and to have done that successfully, it's just, yeah,
A
really quite
sense of
heartwarming.
reward and pride in oneself just for
Yeah,
doing that, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Wicked. I think it's really great what you're doing. I mean, their educational space is still a gap. There's some other companies like Banker that are trying to get into schools and trying to teach them around financial planning. But I think it's really cool to have that kind of fun side of it that sort of takes away or makes it maybe more accessible and more relatable.
Yeah, our feedback from teachers has been that our game is really complementary with Banker.
Yeah.
I think Banker probably focuses more on the budgeting. Our game's not about budgeting, it's more about
It's that
investment.
next step almost, yeah. It's sort of step one, budget. How do you manage your money? Step two, where do you put your money? Yeah, and so obviously now you've got some more kind of businesses going and you've got some of that risk and reward. But I guess the other thing that's important, as you did mention earlier, you've diversified your portfolio. So you actually do have some property investment, you've got some businesses that you're working on, and you've, got some consultancy opportunities as well. So it's not really all one, big risk in the same space. It's actually you've taken risks and some of them have already paid off. So you can actually build your businesses and things from a place of financial security already.
Yeah, it's great that we haven't had to get any financial backers.
Yeah.
It's just been so nice. It's
So
just
hard
taken,
to do as well because getting lending for a business is not an easy feat.
I'm sure. So yeah, that's taken a lot of the stress out. Sure that we can enjoy it a lot more too.
And what is your vision for Hacktics in particular and taking that forward over the next year?
We're still in an experimental stage, so still trying to understand this whole marketing thing and just trying to work out what works. So, it's going well at the moment, getting into schools. We're in the Herald last Sunday. And so, but because of the margins, it's actually a really expensive game to produce. We can't actually really at this stage get out into retail stores. Would have to be
Because
giving
they
it to
do a
them.
markup, I imagine, and then
Would have to give
squeeze.
it to them at a loss
Yeah.
to be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess like schools being a great kind of channel or opportunity for you though is it's where your customer is and that's going to most benefit from the game. And B, there is that network that already exists as opposed to trying to move into, a broader retail chain, which is actually targeted anyone from 10 to 80,
Mm.
at least I guess that customer base is there. And so you can directly kind of attack that and move into that space. So the schools that you're in at the moment, are there many across New Zealand?
Probably over 100, I think.
Wicked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're off to a roaring start then.
With the business study teachers, yeah.
So thinking back to that first home and then the journey of a variety of property investments and eventually hopefully getting closer to the dream home, what does that journey look like, or what can that journey look like?
Well, for us, we did our OER in London and then we went to Melbourne for 4 years. We decided not to buy in Melbourne because the prices there were much more expensive. And they also have stamp duty there. So it was going to cost about 40 grand just for the privilege of buying a home.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, New Zealand's chasing Australia, and now we've got really expensive house prices here too, but stamp tax, that makes it that little bit harder.
Yeah, absolutely. But we came across something called a living away from home allowance. And essentially that gave us about $400 a week that we used to rent a really cool, funky apartment on Chapel Street in South Yarra,
Cool.
right by the
I was
river
in
there.
Melbourne like a couple of weeks ago and we biked like nearly 50K, so all around the Yarra. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it was a fantastic place to live. So that worked out well. Then we came back to New Zealand in 2006 and with 2 little ones and bought our family home in Glenfield for about 500K. And then when the kids were sort of nearing school ages, it was the GFC in 2009. And so we embraced that opportunity to buy a home by the beach, really what we wanted. And then we kept the $500,000 Glenfield home and we rented that out for 6 years and we sold that in 2015 for $1 million. So what had happened?
So that was, sorry, you bought it in 2006 and then you sold it in 2015.
15. And it
Yes.
doubled in value
Yeah.
for
yeah.
$1 million.
So about 9 years.
But when we had bought the beach home, our family home, we bought that for $800K and spent about $100K on renovations. So actually when we sold the first home, that paid off the other one.
Amazing. So it
that's
just
good.
goes to show that actually if you do make those investments and perhaps your first home and your second home and your third home, it's not that dream home. It's actually just being realistic and then holding for a period of time, waiting for that to accrue in value. And then you can afford that dream home and do so, purchase that dream home debt free.
And what we've done this year is because our needs were expanding, we need car parking space for 4 and we need more work from home space.
Yes, it's a key one nowadays.
Yeah, and I've always wanted a view. So what we did at the start of this year is we actually moved out of our home, rented that out, and we're renting ourselves. But what's interesting about that is we have a rental just up the road which has a rateable value of 1.5 million, and the home that we're living in has a rateable value of 3 million.
Wow.
But the rental that we have up the road, rental appraisal $1,400 a week, and we are paying $1,500 a week. So it's not much more in rent, but it is, you know, if we were to buy it, then it would be a lot more money
Yeah.
to have to mortgage.
Yeah, interesting. So I guess that's the difference between buying a property that's an investment and buying a property because you love it and you want to live in it. It sounds like the one with a rateable value of, how much was it?
1.5.
1.5. That's actually a better investment in terms of the rent you're going to get to cover the cost of that property versus the rent that you're going to get to cover your 3 mil dream home. But I think that's really important and an important narrative for first home buyers because when you start out, sometimes making that purchase based on rental yield, based on your ability to grow your capital gains, gives you that opportunity to get closer to your debt-free dream home sooner.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people wouldn't be happy to rent like we are, but it means that we get to live in an amazing property without having to take on extra debt. So we're really happy about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just about, as happens with your game, identifying the different opportunities and then using those to your advantage for a way that suits your goals and whatever your dream home looks like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to finish with our final question, which is if your, let's go with the dream home, had a doorbell and that doorbell played a theme song, what would it play?
Wow, surely this time of year has to be a Christmas Carol, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, very, very current, very current.
Oh, Holy Night.
Oh, Holy Night. How wholesome. Thanks so much, Debbie.
Thank you. It's been awesome.
Thank you for joining our community.
Buying property isn't easy, but listening in will get you one step closer on your journey. Please leave an Apple or Spotify review and provide feedback so we can improve your experience. Join our Facebook group, A Safe Space to Learn Together, or follow us on Instagram at @SliceToBuy. If you have any questions or topics you would like us to touch on, you can email us at hello@slicetobuy.com. A quick reminder, Slice the podcast does not provide personalised investment advice. We are not acting as financial advisors or taking into account your circumstances. To get personalised advice, join us at slicetobuy.com and engage with our partners who can act as your financial advisor or lawyer and support you with your specific needs.